Petty revenge. He wouldn't stop calling, so I let him know what it's like. Okay, so my ex. He's controlling and manipulative and just flat out mean to me. I've been trying to get away from his grip since November 2023, so here we are now. I would block his number, but he would call restricted over and over. There was no winning. I finally blocked him for the last time and ignored every one of his blocked calls. He would reach out my friends and show up at my job. I've made police reports, but since he's not threatening me, they can't do much. So yesterday, I finally answered the restricted call. I ever so nicely asked him to please just leave me alone. He said he will never leave me alone. I hung up. Enough was enough. I have signed up for every insurance quote I could think of with his phone number, posting free ads on Craigslist with his number and anything I can think of. He called again this morning and thanked me because his phone hasn't stopped ringing. I denied having any involvement and asked why he would think it would be me. And his response was, well, because I keep calling and won't leave you alone. Well, at least he's self-aware. He wanted my energy. He's got it. Be careful what you ask for. Petty revenge. Don't want to split the cost of a membership? That's fine. My SL and BIL are notoriously cheap, stingy, and manipulative. Otherwise nice as could be. We have a big box membership, and both I and my husband Bill's brother have a card. One of them, SIL, probably asked to borrow his card to use at said store and then never returned it. Normally, who cares? I'm happy to share, but they are just so damn cheap and stingy that it started to bug me, so I asked for the card back, saying that we needed it. Sure, and she gives it to me. 4 or 5 months later, husband asks for my card, and I ask where his is. Oh, I lent it to Sil. Okay. Plan B. Next time I was at their house, I offered to split the cost of the membership. At the time, that was 50 a year. Response? Oh, we really don't use it that much, but I'll talk to Bill. Plan C and petty revenge. I logged in online and saw that they were using it 1-2 times a month. Penny-wise, pound-foolish, FAFO. I went to the store and asked for my membership to be cancelled effectively immediately. Told no one. Bill and Sil went shopping, loaded it all on the belt, scanned the card, and they were presented with a renewal fee. Rather than pay it, they walked out. We never spoke about it, but Bill told my other Bill who told me and just laughed. He and I are on the same page. Brings me such satisfaction to play out that scene in my head. Petty revenge. Hospital roommate called me ugly. I shut her up. When I was a sophomore in college, my appendix ruptured, and I spent a couple weeks in the hospital, off and on, dealing with various infections and surgery. During my first hospital stay, I shared a room with an older Russian woman who had just had a gastric bypass. I never said a word to her and just kind of kept to myself watching TV and chatting with my mom when she came to visit. I felt kind of bad that I had to walk my IV pole past her to use the bathroom because I didn't want to disturb her. So I tried to be as quiet as possible and limit the number of trips I made. This lady had the habit of talking really loudly on the phone to her daughter, and since she'd heard me speaking English with my mom, I guess she assumed that I couldn't understand her. I had started learning Russian as a freshman, so I didn't understand everything she was saying, but I could gather bits and pieces. One night she's on the phone with her daughter, and she says something to the tune of, "I don't have the room to myself anymore. I'm sharing it with this girl, and she's really ugly." Obviously, I didn't look great because I had a ruptured appendix and was just trying to stay alive at that point, and I didn't really care what she thought of me. It just irked me that she thought it was okay to talk trash about me to her daughter in front of me just because she thought I couldn't understand her. Plus, I was bored and wanted the satisfaction of making her eat her words. So the next time I was wheeling my IV pole past her to use the bathroom, I put on my sweetest smile and said, "Izvinite, polite excuse me," in my best Russian accent. She didn't say anything to me, but she never called her daughter again while I was there, because she knew I could understand her every bitchy word. Petty revenge. We are the same. Just a funny little story I thought I would share. As most people are, I am sick and tired of all the BS Elon Musk is putting people through. I came up with a little bit of an idea to shed some light on some Tesla owners. Let me start off by saying I am not racist whatsoever. I believe in equal opportunities for everybody. I'm a pretty big, tall, white guy. I've been told I can look rather intimidating even when I don't mean to. I've gotten to the point where I'm at the end of my rope as far as Elon Musk and all his antics. As far as I'm concerned, at this point, if you own a Tesla, you're an idiot too for supporting this pose in any way, shape, or form. I understand some people own their Teslas before they realize he was so unhinged. But I think what I'm doing is important to a certain degree, but it is also downright comical. I go outside and I walk my dog, but I'm wearing basically a costume design for American History X. My head is shaved, I am wearing Doc Martens with tight jeans, as well as a black bomber jacket. I look like a skinhead, but let me reiterate, I am not a skinhead. I am not racist whatsoever. My parents raised me better than that. Anyways, I am walking along waiting for my opportunity, and finally it comes. A Tesla driver lets me cross the street at the crosswalk, so I turn toward them and give them a big old Nazi salute and yell out, "Sieg Heil, we are one, Heil Hitler." The look on their faces was priceless. It's like they realized what they were associating themselves with right then and there in real time. Call it what you want, but the look on these people's faces was worth all of it. Petty revenge. I'll park where I choose. I posted this in Rentitled People, where it fit perfectly until yesterday, and now the update fits in here even better. I live in a block of flats apartments. We have 2 parking lots for the residents. The big parking lot holds nearly all the cars. The parking lot where I park only has 5 bays, and it is close to the back entrance. My flat is almost next to that door. All the bays are unreserved, and it is first come, first serve. We have a lady who also uses the parking lot, and when she goes out, she puts a bucket in the bay so that nobody else takes her parking. She also regularly will use a different parking spot for her big-ass people carrier. I generally don't care, but when she parks in such a way that I battle to get out, then I get upset. I have tried talking to her to ask that she makes sure that I can get out. She tells me in no uncertain terms that she is married to the chairman of the HOA and she will park where she wants. And if I have a problem to take it up with the chairman of the HOA, now for the petty revenge. My youngest daughter has a really beat-up car, more like a bumper car, and the bucket lady moved parkings again yesterday, and she reversed into her new parking. My daughter followed suit and also reverse parked, but made sure that she left about 3 inches between her car and the driver's side door, while still being in her own parking bay. To add insult to injury, when she parked her monstrosity, she left about 6 inches between the cars. I would love to be there when she has to go out. Petty revenge. Realtor parked in my spot, so I made sure your buyer was dissuaded. For context, I lived in a condo where we all have assigned parking spots, and there are several visitor spots sprinkled throughout. Well, one day I came home in the middle of a weekday, so the vast majority of parking spaces were empty. So I was very confused as to why a large unfamiliar SUV was in my spot. Now we get the occasional visitor that mistakenly or purposefully parks in whatever spot they want. With this in mind, I parked right behind him and approached the window to ask him how long he was planning to be there. He said 45 minutes. I asked him if he could move to a visitor spot. There were some directly across from mine. He said no in the rudest and shrillest voice I had ever heard come out of a man. Then he started going off about how he's a realtor. He's showing this house the door to which is directly in front of my spot. The property management said to park here in this spot. I highly doubt that, and so on and so on. I decided that I didn't have any time or energy for Karens that day, and in the middle of his ranting, I just said, "Okay then," and walked away to go park in a visitor spot. Rude people irritate me, especially if they're defending their shitty behavior. So I promptly took my revenge. My window faces the parking lot, so I set up my speaker on the windowsill and started blasting hard core rap music for about half an hour, in the hopes that the buyer decided our quiet little community wasn't quiet enough for them. I figured the vast majority of my neighbors were at work anyway, so 30 minutes of loud music wasn't going to annoy anyone too much. I hope I wasted a bunch of his time. Maybe don't be rude to complete strangers. Edit to those asking why I didn't get him towed. I had tried in the past for other offenders. However, the HOA had not contracted with any specific companies, and the companies I had called wouldn't touch any cars on a private, multi-family property that they weren't assigned to. Petty revenge. Bitch, please. My sister-in-law, let's call her Jill, is a petty narcissist with BPD, who tried to pawn her 7-year-old daughter off on us indefinitely, while she took some time out to work on herself and pursue her older boyfriend, who did not like kids. When we said we would of course help out, but we first had to ensure the girl's father was consulted on this plan, she threw a fit. Apparently, she had been working hard for the last 2 years to alienate her child from her father's affection, and it was working. If we weren't willing to help her hide the child from him, she would ask someone else and no longer speak to us. A couple of days later, my husband asked me for our new Netflix password because his sister wanted to watch the movie Parenthood on our subscription. I told him, sure, I changed it to FUCKYOUJILL. Petty revenge. Tell me the service I paid for won't happen. So not sure if this counts as revenge, but I was petty. I moved to a new place. Had to get the gas hooked up. I scheduled an appointment with the gas company technician. 1000 a.m. Paid the deposit too. At 09:30, I'm at the gym near my house when I get a phone call that the technician is sick and can't make it. Me, can't you send someone else? Rep, impossible. We have no one else. Me, but you are literally cancelling 30 minutes before. Rep, haven't you ever been sick? These things happen. We have to reschedule. Me, I had to free my schedule for this meeting. I'm not mad that the technician is sick. I'm mad that you don't have a backup. Rep, then free another day. Today will be impossible. I googled laws in my country about customer rights. Turns out they owe me the equivalent of $200 for bailing on the meeting. I called the call center back, asked if they're sure they couldn't send someone. The now pissed off lady repeated that it was impossible. Me, so how would you like to send me the $200? Rep, come again? I sent her the link, the law on the government website. Rep, we will send someone over as scheduled. This is where I went petty. Me, are you sure? You said your guy was sick, wouldn't want you to get him out of bed. Rep, sir, the technician will arrive at the scheduled time. Me, it's just that you said it was impossible. I wouldn't want you break a law of physics. Rep, sir, the technician will arrive at the scheduled time. Me, I'm just astonished at how fixable it is when a few minutes ago you said it was impossible. Rep, sir, the technician will arrive at the scheduled time. Me, yes. But what changed other than you not wanting to pay out compensations? Rep, sir, the technician will arrive at the scheduled time. Me, because it would seem to me, as a layman, that maybe it was possible. But you just didn't feel like doing your job until you found out it would cost you. Rep, sir, the technician will arrive at the scheduled time. I kept it up for another 10 minutes, went home in time to get my gas connected. Now I'm moving for the entire 3 apartment buildings, 39 apartments to switch gas companies. It's going well. P.S. I realize it's paid. I am concerned with my spelling as well. I can't edit the title though. P. A lot of you are trying to search for some clue that I made this up. At first it was kinda annoying. I'm new to posting on Reddit, but now I kinda like it. Giving the internet sleuths something to chew on. You guys be you. You're also part of what makes Reddit cool, weird, silly, stupid, wonderful. Petty revenge. Roommate's vandalized vehicle. In September, I moved in with 3 roommates who told me that if I wanted to leave, I just needed to find a replacement. I informed everyone that I would be leaving this month and would find a replacement. I found someone to take my place and began moving my belongings out of the house. The replacement went to the office to apply but was denied. The office said the owner wanted no more changes to the lease, even though they had sent her an application. With my belongings already moved out, I informed my roommates that I could not afford to pay my full portion of the rent. I owed rent on the first for another place, but would try to sell my car, which was sitting outside and had a mechanical issue, making it not drivable. A few days later, they started demanding the full amount and were very rude to me, so I ended up blocking them. The next morning, I went to go retrieve my items out of my car and noticed it was missing. I called the police, and they said it was towed because all the wheels were off, and it was sitting on bricks. Petty revenge. Vehicle dealership tried to scam me. This happened a few years back now. I was looking for a car and saw my local motorbike dealership was selling a little car. Was there runabout? They said they had 2 and didn't need both of them. Seemed legit. I trusted them to be trusty, so asked almost no questions. I'm a young, dumb-looking white chick, and they were hasty to sell it to me. They informed it used a little oil, but that's pretty normal for an older car. Little did they know. I understand engines very well, and I drove it a lot. Quickly I identified something was very off, even though it seemed normal. They had tried to mask an engine that was about to blow, and I knew my rights. I took it back, fluttered my big dumb eyelashes, and said it seems to be using a little more oil than the legal parameters for it to be sold as a road-worthy vehicle, and because I spotted it in under 4 weeks, they're liable for its replacement. They were pretty shocked to say the least, tried to worm their way out of it. But I knew. I knew they knew. One shiny replacement upgraded engine at their cost later. My car will just go and go forever. I'm over the moon with my car 4 years later, and that new engine is singing ha ha ha. Petty revenge. Force me to parallel park. I'll force you to parallel park. I lived in a neighborhood where the houses had a driveway for one car, so if you two cars you had to park one on the street. Between our driveway and the next door neighbor's driveway, we had 3 street parking spaces. My next door neighbor drove a company car and did not like to park the company car on the street, so the Saham's car was parked on the street in front of their house and rarely moved, leaving 2 spots. My girlfriend took the bus to work. She didn't like leaving her car on the street all day, so she got the driveway. One of my other neighbors would get home before me and always parked in the spot next to our driveway, forcing me to have to parallel park my big work van in the middle spot. It annoyed me when I would come home tired and cranky and have to parallel park my big work truck. I asked him nicely if we could agree that the first on home could take the center spot, so the next one home would not have to parallel park. He flat out said no, then continued to do so. This was easy enough to fix. My girlfriend parked her car on the street in front of the house, leaving him the middle spot to parallel park. This pissed him off. Our city has a 72-hour rule for street parking, but doesn't enforce it unless someone complains. He complained. Parking enforcement came out and not only put a "move this car" or else warning not only on my wife's car, but on the next door neighbor's car. I apologized to the next door neighbor and told him what was up. So for the next few weeks, every 3 days, we would juggle our cars. Until the neighbor agreed to my proposal, first one home take the middle spot. Don't force me to have to parallel park. Petty revenge. Talking smack about the employees in front of the boss. You can walk it off for 2 to 5 weeks while we fix your car. My shop has a fair amount of drama lately, due to the political climate and my boss having to put up with stupid people questioning why our mechanics speak Spanish around customers. My boss makes it clear to these people to mind their own business, and if they want to go somewhere else, that Pet Boys, dealerships, and Walmart are in the next town over. That generally shuts them up, because a tow to the next town over is over $350 one way, with the bad tow truck, and it's $500 on the flatbed. In comes Boomer Dan. Dude has a stick so far up his ass it's guaranteed to stand square at an intersection. Dan drives a new Honda sedan and somehow thinks it's the same thing as a 4x4, because he couldn't afford a truck. He basically ripped the plastic skid plate and somehow got it wrapped around one of the half shafts, making a lot of noise with a burning plastic smell. He demanded we fix it quick because he needs it back before he goes to LA. My boss warned him we could take it off, but there might be other damage caused by the plastic. He didn't want to hear it. Then he turned his attention to some tech goofing off, laughing and replying to someone in Spanish. He said something to the like that of he hired some proper mechanics. They would get shit done faster. My boss took it as a disrespectful and told him he's gonna have to wait a week, maybe 5 to replace the part, or he can drive it out to the next town. We were kind of hoping for it just to catch a fire happen or get towed. Dan basically ate shit, left his car and walked home. He now has to wait 2 weeks for a job we finished at the end of the night last weekend, with the replacement only costing $75. Surprisingly, he didn't do any serious damage to his car except the plastic cover. Petty revenge. How rock beat paper. Cosplayers 1, Street Preacher 0. One of the fun parts of doing public safety consulting is the wide variety of clients and experiences. One of my favorites was an anime convention. Although it isn't my thing, the event was always a ton of fun, and the people were awesome. One year, they changed venues. It had been previously held at a university, but it outgrew that space and moved to a downtown convention center. With tons of space and a huge pedestrian street between the 2 main buildings, it was a great space. Being in charge of public safety and emergency management, I knew this came with new challenges, primarily being very visible with far more public interaction than ever before. As much as my emergency plans were very comprehensive, I soon discovered something I'd overlooked. A street preacher. This is a preacher that was well known in the city and walked a very thin line between free speech and hate speech. He also came with an amplifier. He had been doing this for a long time, so he was always just on the edge of what the law allows. He parked himself between the 2 buildings and started harassing attendees. Not enough to meet the legal definition of harassment, but definitely unpleasant and not something patrons should be subjected to. I discussed the situation with the police liaison officer, and as I suspected, they couldn't do anything besides ask him to leave. Which they did, and he didn't. As we were working to figure out a solution, he jokingly said, "Well, you have a sound permit. Maybe just get bigger speakers." Light bulb. We had bigger speakers. Much bigger speakers. I put a call out over the radio to my emergency management team, and we mobilized. Before he could say repent, we'd set up an impromptu DJ booth in the entrance, big speakers outside, and taped down all the cables, because safety. Sandstorm had always been a bit of a meme for the con staff. So, he was rude, but we were darudier. About 400 patrons started dancing, laughing, and having a great time. The street preacher soon found himself surrounded by all the people he hates, and they were having the time of their lives. Nobody could hear him over the music and the cheers. He was absolutely livid. About half an hour later, I got a call from the police liaison officer. He made a complaint about amplified harassment. They told him to pound sand. We had permits and were totally legal. And if he didn't like it, he could leave. I've done a lot of things in my 20-year career in emergency services, but drowning out hate with happiness is one of the things I'm most proud of. Petty revenge, played along with prank texts, became the prankster. For context, this happened in middle school. I was only a few months into having my first cell phone, the iPhone 4S. I was chilling at home one night when a random number started texting me. After name-dropping me, they started sending me threatening messages. I'm talking stuff that was way over the line for my age. They were making it sound like they were outside, ready to beat me up if I left. It was pretty scary for about 30 seconds, but then I Googled their phone number and found all of their information. Cybersecurity was a lot looser back then, so it was very common for people to post their info publicly. This person had their phone number in their Facebook description, LOL. It was a chick from my school, Sarah. I saw her in passing a couple of times, but we never had classes together. Why would she be messaging me like this? Then I connected the dots. I had recently befriended her sister, Abby, and gave her my phone number to chat. Abby started messaging me a few minutes after Sarah did. She struck up a casual conversation, asking how my night was going, but it was clear they were working together and she wanted to see me freak out. So I obliged. I lied and told her I was on the phone with the police. I told the officers every message that was sent to me, and they were tracing the number as we speak. As soon as I said this, I got a wall of texts from both parties profusely apologizing. Abby admitted it was Sarah and that it was just a prank. There were lots of sad emojis and panic about the idea of police officers showing up at their house. Ultimately, I told the police that it was a prank and to call off their pursuit. The girls apologized again, and that was the last time I spoke with them. I know it's not the craziest story on this sub, but it was very satisfying in the moment. I'm happy they got a taste of their own medicine because prank texting people like that is messed up. Petty revenge. Don't want to spare a day for trash? Fine, no parking for you. A new neighbor just moved in last year to the neighborhood. It was all right most of the time, except that they possess several cars, so the cars are parked on street side, mainly in front of my house. It was good until several weeks ago when they become much more aggressive in claiming the street outside my house as their parking spot. When my wife tried to park her car on the street side, they got upset about it and start leaving their cars in front of my house days at the time. I am generally fine with it because I don't need that much space in front of the house, except for Friday when I need to take out the trash. Friday a couple weeks ago, they parked their car in front of my house and leave the space in front of their house empty. I had to leave my trash cans in my driveway due to the lack of space on the curb. In the meantime, the curbside outside of their house is completely empty. No car or trash cans. After that had happened, I feel that it was a move designed to show to me that they think they now owned the curbside. Outside of my house, as they have multiple cars, I decided to park my car curbside instead of in the driveway for my trip out of state for several days. And then to top it off, I continue to leave my car curbside now and only park in the driveway when I needed to take out the trash on Thursday night. I come home from work early than them, so I know I would get first dip. TLDR, I just wanted to have one day of curbside to take out the trash, and you can't even give me that. Now you don't get to park curbside outside my house anymore. Petty revenge. Be smarter, not stronger. Sorry, this is long, but it needs context. I am the youngest of 10 kids. My siblings are 8 to 20 years older than I am, as my mum had me when she was 40 and I was a surprise. My parents were abusive, so many of my older siblings learned to take their frustrations out on me as I was the most vulnerable. This made life difficult sometimes, as at the age of 10, my sister and brother closest in age to me were a set of twins, Joe and Hannah. Not real names, who were 18. Now, imagine a 10-year-old little girl versus an 18-year-old guy who works in construction. That was me and Joe. And Joe loved to torment the shit out of me. He picked on me, called me names, told me I was a cow, an elephant. I wasn't fat back then, but he made me think I was. Locked me in the trunk of his car, picked me up with my arms wrapped around me so I couldn't do anything, etc. But anything he did was ignored because abuse was pretty normal in our house. My dad used to slap me if I asked a simple question, so anything Joe did was considered tame. Anyway, one day, Joe decided to pick on me. I tried to avoid him, but if he set his sights on me, I really couldn't. This day, he took my bike, which was brand new. I got it for my birthday. We were poor, and we only got new things on birthdays and Christmas. Joe decided to lock it in his trunk. He kept it for weeks and wouldn't give it back, and of course my parents wouldn't do anything. So one day, Joe buys a brand new pair of sneakers. He worked a good construction job. After several days, I notice he left his sneakers lying around in the living room, and he's out on a date. Now we lived on a 4 acres, with woods. I decided to take those brand new sneakers through the woods and down to the creek and bury them. He looked for those things. He asked me if I saw them. I acted like I didn't even know he had new sneakers. It wasn't until 30 years later that I told him. But every time he did something to me after that day, I did something like I threw his car keys in the weeds once. One time, he destroyed my boombox, so I took the license plate off his car. My dad fixed up and sold used cars, so we had Magna tags, etc. I became so devious, and he never knew it was me. He had all this outright brawn. But I was smart and quietly got him into trouble left and right. He never knew. So be careful who you bully, you never know. He eventually went into therapy, grew up and became a good man, but he never knew that I retaliated every time he hurt me. Petty revenge, getting revenge on my shitty manager. I worked at this after-school care place. It was always held at the back of the elementary schools in my area, and I would change sites pretty regularly. A lot of high schoolers worked there, including me at the time, and I quite frankly loved that job. Although I did absolutely love my job, I hated my manager. He was a higher-up within the company that would stop by and oversee to make sure everything was going smoothly. He was more important than a manager, but that's what I'm going to refer to him as from now on. He was horrible at his job, and everyone I worked with agreed. For example, there was plenty of times someone should have been fired, and he was too chicken to do it. Like a co-worker who had shown up drunk to work, one that harassed me and multiple other women we worked with who was reported by multiple of us, and one that would literally disappear for hours during her work hours. The real problem, however, came very shortly before he fired. Me didn't know he knew how to that, because I missed my shift. I had just left school, and as I was getting into the car, I accidentally closed the door on my fingers, like the middle of my fingers, and it was so hard I broke 2 of them and had to rush to the hospital. On the way, I shot him a quick text that my friend sent who drove me because I was crying too hard to call him. Now, in the contract I signed when I got the job, a no-call, no-show resulted in being fired, unless it was a medical emergency. So after I came back to work with one of those splints on 2 of my broken fingers, he came to the site I was at with a write-up that I had to sign. I asked him why, because I told him before my shift had even started. He looked at me and said, "I called you saying you still had to come in, and you didn't answer." But I had no service in the ER, so I never got it. I told him there's no way he expected me to come in with 2 broken fingers, and he told me it wasn't his problem. So he fired me, but told me I was still expected to show up to my 2 final shifts of the week, which he had done 20 minutes before first shift, and I was so in shock I went. On my second, a different higher-up stopped by that I had never met Juts to check in. She came over and introduced herself, holding out her hand. When I told her my name, she retracted her hand and walked away without another word. After my shift, a co-worker called me and let me know that my manager had called every single co-worker of mine and told them if I showed up again to call the police, because I wasn't supposed to be there for my last 2 shifts. I was in shock. He had told me to go to them. There was even an HR person sitting in on our meeting that could confirm this, so I went to HR. I had a meeting with the head of the department and the woman who was there when I got fired. I told them about the co-worker who had harassed me. the write-up that didn't make sense, and the HR person confirmed he had told me to show up for my shifts. And you're probably wondering where I got my revenge. He got fired because of me. They went to other of my co-workers who confirmed my story, and they fired him. I learned this a few months after the whole debacle when talking to a school friend of mine. Her mum works in the school district and confirmed to me that he had been fired because of me. To this day, whenever I remember it, I smile. Do I feel sorta bad? Yes. But when I tell you my story doesn't even include the half of what this manager did and didn't do, you'd understand why I feel so happy. Although this may not be deemed as petty, I think it is because I had an attitude of, if I'm going down, he's coming down with me. And that's the only reason I went to HR.